Hey there, Eli here to break down the mechanics of Resolve and Inspiration and attack patterns that you'll find in the Sanctum. We'll also explore the types of rooms you'll come across, the bosses, and relic strategy. Let's start by covering the Resolve and Inspiration system. Resolve and Inspiration offer something unique to Path of Exile in that the way we should approach combat here, for melee builds in particular, has to be different. Now first, let's define how Resolve and Inspiration work. This first part, most of you understand intuitively, but how the maximums work for these isn't intuitive. So, Resolve and Inspiration serve as an additional health bar that we have to maintain and keep watch of within the Sanctum. In non-boss rooms, we're going to primarily be taking damage that hits our Inspiration first, and then our Resolve. Our Resolve serves more as our primary health bar, in that it can be restored by touching fountains. The game tries to show us this or imply this, with Inspiration not having a natural maximum the way Resolve does. To expand on this a little bit, the Sanctum has regular rooms and boss rooms. Regular rooms are where you find the exit or kill the guards. Boss rooms obviously have a boss. There are mid-floor bosses that you can come across, and you'll always face a boss at the end of a floor. In regular rooms, monsters and traps damage only your Resolve and Inspiration bars, hitting Inspiration first. Bosses, however, deal damage to your Resolve or Inspiration and your actual health pool at the same time. So if you have Inspiration, for example, boss damage will hit your Inspiration bar and your character's life or energy shield. Here's the less intuitive aspect of these bars. Both Resolve and Inspiration are soft capped at 1,000 points. To try to make this simpler to understand, I've differentiated the ways in which you receive maximum Resolve or Inspiration by calling one room gains and reward gains. Now let's define this. Room gains can surpass the soft cap of 1,000. A room gain example is when we enter a room that gives us an affliction, and we have gain Inspiration upon receiving an affliction, either from a relic or from, for example, the Rusted Chimes Minor Boon. And as you can see here, we're going to enter this room with 933 Inspiration, and because we're gaining an affliction upon entering the room, we're going to break that 1,000 Inspiration cap. This is a room gain, which bypasses the 1,000 cap. Now, to provide a counterexample, if we have 1,100 Inspiration and touch a Radiant Fountain, which gives 200 Inspiration, the game would reset us to the cap of 1,000. It works the same way when interacting with a pact that would give you an affliction and you have something that gains Inspiration on receiving an affliction. This is a reward gain. So a room gain is when you would gain Inspiration upon entering a room, and a reward gain is when you would gain Inspiration as a reward like a fountain. Alright, let's hit something juicy that I know a lot of you have been interested in. Breaking down the fights. We're going to tackle these in order of how common we encounter them in the Sanctum. First up, that means guards. Like everything else in this video and all my videos, each guard is segmented into time slots that you can skip to from the links in the video description or along the video's time bar. I've included a couple words description to help identify them by their most prominent abilities. This is the Entombing Warden. His normal attack can easily be dodged so long as you're moving left or right to him. And then his Chargeup shot is going to be this shoot into the air and rain down a bunch of ice shots in a wall moving forward from the point that he lands the arrow. The Masked Combatant. This guy throws bombs on the ground that will eventually blow up, and they'll detonate sooner if you are walking over them. If you don't hit him, this is all he does. He'll run around, he'll throw a bomb, and he'll do a smoke bomb teleport to you. It blinds you. But once you hit him, he'll create a bunch of mirror images of himself, and all of these mirror images will throw bombs on the ground as well. The Infernal Sentinel has a normal slash attack up close, a secondary attack where he will charge his sword and shoot a straight line beam out at you, and another charge where flame circles in on him for a second and he shoots out about 7 projectiles. Finally, if you're at a medium distance away from him, but nearby, you'll summon 4 flaming images of himself to walk alongside him with flaming shields towards you. This is the Obsidian Sentinel. And what he's going to do is he's going to do this Chargeup teleport slam attack, where he tells us where he's going to go by this big symbol on the ground, and we have a second to get out of the way. And every 3 or 4 attacks, he's going to shoot out some lines in the ground, which culminate into these 3 floating bombs. These bombs will sit here for a little while before they explode. The Crimson Archmage will often start his attack sequence with that giant AoE explosion. However, his normal attack consists of these 3 fireballs. Notice they'll track to whatever distance you are from him. And then when he feels ready, he'll do a giant charge-up attack. You'll be able to see that flaming on the ground, the flaming circle, and be able to evade it in whatever way you can. This here is the Deathly Archmage. His normal attack is going to do this little charge up and throw an ice line at you. He'll also form these ice shards right around him that will also shoot at you. And if you are right under him, he's going to jump up and slam down for a huge glacial spike. This here is the Deadly Blademaster. His regular attack does hit in an arc around him. So it's not enough with this guy to simply move left or right if you're circling him. You need to be directly behind him after he attacks. The notable skill about this guy is that he has a blink strike, and he does this every 4th attack, so long as there's distance between the 2 of you. And the way to evade this is actually very simple. Use a movement skill. Just pick a direction and use a movement skill once he starts his attack animation. These floating orbs belong to the Undying Archmage. He'll summon them around himself, and then they will find their own spot, set up shop, and shoot little bolts at you, like those. Now, when it comes to the orbs that shoot projectiles at us, we can jump onto them and they'll explode. So jump on them and jump away. But I wanted to show just how oppressive they can be if you don't do this. As you can see, the Undying Archmage himself will periodically, as his secondary attack, throw out these lightning beams that hits a small area multiple times. This here is the Azure Assassin. You see that first charged up bolt? That lays stationary in the air for a moment, and then pauses, and then becomes the big blue vortex that you see crawling around. If we're in range of it, it's going to come after us slowly and serve as a bit of space denial. As you can see, if we run around this guy, we can easily evade his attacks. But notice too, if we're close to him, see the lightning sparkle across him? When that happens and we're close to him, he's actually doing a short-ranged arc cone power shot. So be mindful of that. The Templar Marksman is one of the fastest attackers among the guards. Before you damage him, he has 2 attacks, and they're both basic arrow attacks, but they're pretty quick. The first one is his regular long-range attack, as you can see here, and his second one, if you get close enough to him, he's going to do this little dodge roll into another regular attack. And then, once we damage him, he'll do this little charge-up shot and fire a signal flare. And then, as you can see here, he has this secondary follow-up cast animation where he raises his hand to the sky and a red beam comes down on him. So the special attack is a 2-parter. First, he has the symbols under him, signifying he's throwing out the signal flare, and then he raises his hand for the red beam, and that calls down the rain of fire arrows. On his own, very easy to evade. In a group, he might be able to get a couple shots on you, but if you remember to always keep moving, never directly towards or away, you should be able to evade most attacks. Now, general strategy for dealing with guards. It might sound a little counterintuitive, but being close to most of these enemies gives you time to read the attack they're trying to throw at you and move out of the way properly. If any of you are familiar with the Dark Souls games, this is a strategy that is very often employed, which is to get within a certain range of the monster in order to trigger the certain skill that you want them to use. So when we get into melee range with the Templar Marksman or with the Infernal Sentinel, we have an idea that they're going to roll away and shoot an arrow, or they're going to do just a basic slash attack, things like that. Another general rule is most of the time we don't want to walk directly towards them or directly away from them. The archers, the blink strike, these attacks like it when you do that, that's how they hit you. Okay, with the guards out of the way, let's talk boss movesets. There are 2 kinds of bosses in the Sanctum, room bosses and floor bosses. Room bosses live in rooms that have specific names, and you can find 1 per floor. We're going to alternate between the room boss and the floor boss, and then move down the list. So we'll start with floor 1, then go to floor 2, etc. First up, floor 1, room boss. This one lives in the Scriptorium. The room boss for floor 1 lives because of these 6 Crimson Priests that are connected to him. Every time one of these Crimson Priests dies, his special attack evolves. Now with all 6 priests alive, he has this single circle attack. With 1 priest dead, he retains his normal single circle attack, but he gains a special attack, which is this quad circle. You can tell his special attack because he does this additional charge up with his free hand. Now with 2 priests dead, the special attack turns into a line of exploding rune circles. With 3 priests dead, his special attack throws a wave of expanding circles in the direction you were when he started the attack. With 4 priests dead, his special charges up with his book spinning around and does an AoE around himself. His basic attack also can change and do a double circle attack seen here. With 5 priests dead, his comfortably predictable AoE circle turns into something more reminiscent of Azur's lightning attacks, randomly placing rune circles down. And like Azur's attack, the runes always explode in order of creation, so you can dodge them like so. Preferably we want to be on safe ground the whole time, but if you can't find any, you can pick a circle that was created later in the attack, stand on it while the earlier ones detonate, and then jump off of it. Once the 6th priest is dead, he dies, but be aware that if the priest dies during an attack, that attack will still resolve before he actually gets killed. The floor 1 boss is called Varaketh, aka Old Candleback. Before you deal any damage to him, he'll periodically pop off a firebomb off of his back. He'll walk at you and do a regular slash or a Chargeup spinning slash that can hit you if you're behind him or off to his side. And once we damage him, he'll add a couple moves. One of which is this Fire Breath, which also does AoE damage around himself. The tracking on the Fire Breath isn't great, so just use a movement skill to run behind him and you'll be fine. He'll also do this little wind up and hop, which shoots a straight line attack out in front of him. Also, keep in mind the more damaged he becomes, the more frequently he'll fire off those little fire bombs off of his back. He'll also squat down like this when he gets past half health and fire off a barrage in front of him. Moral of the story, never stand in front of him and watch for the fire bombs popping off of his back. The floor 2 room boss lives in the Reliquary zone. And this guy, the Greater Wraith, is one of the more dangerous bosses in the Sanctum due to how early on we can fight him and the potential lack of relics that we might have or built up inspiration and resolve to deal with him. And the primary reason he's dangerous is because he denies space as he becomes more damaged, and the nature of his chaos bolts that he throws out are random in the way that they move. This can make dodging them kind of difficult. Before we damage him, he does this triple prong wave attack and poops out chaos bolts whenever he moves. The triple prong attack hinders us for 4 seconds, which slows our movement speed. Now once damaged, his attack pattern expands. He'll now do the same movement skill, but instead he slams at the end of it, which does a 10 stack movement slow where we regain our full movement over 4 seconds. And the strength of the slow dissipates as we move. And he'll start doing this charge up attack when you're near him, that after a brief delay he'll do an AoE ground slam. Now above 75% health, he will start summoning these lines of tombs. Between 75 and 100% health, he'll have one line, and these tombs activate when you run over them. They lift up in the air, and they slam down in place. This serves as additional area denial. Between 50 and 75% health, he'll summon a second row of tombs, and then at 25 to 50, he'll summon a third row. So the thing is, this boss deals chaos damage and statically denies space as he becomes more damaged. If you must fight him because you have no other way to move through the Sanctum, or because there's a significant reward attached, instant movement skills are your friend. Flame Dash, Frost Blink, Lightning Warp if you have the gem slots and or casting speed for it. Movement skills like Leap Slam that actually traverse the space in between point A and B are susceptible to being hit by his most dangerous and common attack, the Floating Chaos Orbs. Be careful with this guy. Floor 2 Floor Boss. Here we're going to fight Braom and Uzar, the 2 experiments. This fight is designed to scare you, especially you melee and close range players. The arena feels small, and these mobs are humongous, and they get bigger as the other one gets damaged. So let's break these 2 down and remove their status as melee Sanctum killers. First, let's take a look at these bosses' movesets before killing either one of them or damaging them. Keep an eye on Braom, the one with the huge hammer. His attacks have long startup times. This can be taken advantage of, and, bit of a spoiler, his special attack can also be easily dodged. We'll cover both, but I want to say during this section here that I recommend killing Uzar first, which we can do by taking advantage of Braom's longer charge-up attacks. Once Uzar is killed, Braom gains 2 special moves. One is this ground stomp walk where he sends fissures out in front of him. He'll readjust to your position as much as he can with each step, and he'll take between 7 to 11 steps. Run speed and movement skills are your friend here. There's nothing to do but avoid the damage until he tuckers himself out. His second special move is this Veil Ground Slam type skill where he pounds the ground twice, and this pounding does damage if you stand in it, and generates these indicators showing you where the ensuing spikes are going to hit. Simply stand in between these markers and chill. The damage will pass right by you, and Braom won't start attacking you again until it's over. Now, let's take a look at Uzar. Uzar has a little less range on his attacks. See how he'll just walk at you and try to punch? He gains some moves as well once Braom is dead. First is this super foot slam. This generates a wide fissure that travels in a straight line. You can see it coming because he'll stop moving and raise his foot. If he stops moving, he's either doing this or his other special attack. It's important to note he spawns little red worm-like things that move in seemingly random directions after the fissure is done. This is sort of similar to the Great Wraith's randomly moving Chaos Orbs, so keep an eye out them so you can avoid them. They don't do a ton of damage though, so it's not the end of the world if you do get tagged. Additionally, the other special move he has doesn't require immediate reaction to avoid the damage, and he alternates between the two. So if he stops moving and did his other special already, he's doing this one, and that's your signal to get out of the way. Second attack is this blood ball. Take a look at this example of me trying to evade it. See how I'm moving sort of with the ball, trying to run from it, away from it? See how I take splash damage when it lands? This is not good. Here's the correct way to manipulate this attack. See how once he casts it, I use travel skills to get right underneath it and then jump away? The ball will fall under two conditions, either after its duration is up, or if it finds you underneath its center point. So we jump underneath its center and then jump away, which causes it to land where we want it and avoid its damage. Now keep in mind here that it leaves a puddle on the ground that does small damage over time if you're in it for about 13 seconds. And that's really it for the experiments. My recommendation, kill Braom, but both of them can be manipulated in the event you don't have as much control over which one you kill first. The floor 3 room boss is the Aureate Guardian, and he's found in the Sanctum Bellum room. Before he's damaged, he'll do this basic attack of a center ring with 3 smaller rings attached that explode after this first flash. In addition, he'll summon these pillars of light that split into others and move slowly towards you. After you damage him, he'll start throwing up to 5 orbs of light in a large cone in front of himself. He'll also do this move that has a fairly long Chargeup animation, where he summons a bunch of swords to twirl around in the air for a second before slamming down on a spot where you were when it targeted you. These are easy to avoid so long as you don't double back on the location you were a second ago. This room boss is fairly straightforward. Those are all of his attacks, and because of the delay on his primary attack with the symbols on the ground and his slow movement speed, he gives us ample opportunity to hit him between his attacks. Get a feel for his timing and you should be able to house this guy. The floor 3 boss is Xenathar the Templar Reaper. This guy's attacks are mostly a combination of the Whirling Blades movement skill and Lacerate, sort of, but slower and easier to see. Let's take a look. As you can see, it's not super fast, but its distance does change depending on how far away you are. The Lacerate type skill tracks you as you move around, so you either need to be close to him to run around him and avoid the hit, or really far away. And once he takes damage though, things start to heat up a little bit. These beams will start crossing the room, and after a short delay, they'll turn active, and that's when they deal damage. They don't damage you when they first show up, only when the beam flashes after that short delay. Xenathar will also start doing this move here, a short windup and a slow-ish cyclone type attack that also poops out these little sun globes that move in almost a straight line. When this attack happens, he can also summon a beam of light that slowly tracks you, like the room boss did, only this one doesn't split. That's really Xenathar in a nutshell. Keep in mind that all boss abilities have cooldowns associated with them. So once Xenathar does that cyclone type skill where everything goes to hell and there's a lot of visual clutter and orbs everywhere and a beam of light chasing you, that ability is going to go on cooldown. And for you melee folk, that's when you want to strike. But overall, the window for punishing this boss is shorter than the others that we've seen so far. And it might seem abnormally harder if you're a melee or just not great at the Sanctum yet. But this is point of the game where if this was actually a roguelike, you'd want to have some sort of synergy with your build of items and skills to reliably win it. And it's the same concept here. We might go into this fight knowing we'll get hit a little bit, so we need to be on the lookout for boons and relics that would make our life easier for dealing with this kind of fight, so that we don't just get hard stopped right here. Keep in mind too, with patch 3.2.1, the amount of damage you take from being close to your enemy is going to get reduced even more. A little love for melee. The Colossal Lithomancer lives in the Mausoleum in floor 4. This is the room boss, and man, this fight, if you're not ready for it, it's tough. Before this guy takes damage, he brings up these blocks in front of him and punches them at you. He'll also bring up this little green circle around himself and summon a floaty rock. Isn't it cute? It's not. It explodes when you touch it, and it explodes on its own after a period of time, roughly 5 seconds. Once he takes damage, things start to get real. He'll get 2 new attacks, and let's cover the simple one first. The simple one is where he creates this giant green ring. He'll raise his hands up and then slam down and deal damage in the ringed area. Pretty simple, straightforward. The one that gets complicated is a more advanced version of our friend the Floaty Rock. Once he starts getting damaged, he'll summon many Floaty Rocks with different patterns and total numbers of Floaty Rocks. Now the patterns can be kind of simple, like this large ring, not too hard, run through them to detonate them and move out of the way. Then they can cover about 1/4 of the arena, like this, which can be a little more challenging, requires a little more wherewithal. And then his kind of ultimate attack is they can cover the entire arena like this. He can also sometimes overlap doing a ring of Floaty Rocks and the entire arena coverage of Floaty Rocks. Now, the question that should be on your mind is, how do I avoid damage from the entire arena of Floaty Rocks? The answer is not this, where I run in a circle and end up taking a bunch of damage. One answer is to do something like this, where you're aware that the move is happening, you start within the circle of Explodey Rocks, and you jump around in that circle and time it such that you land as that animation is playing where you originated. And you jump through and see I don't take any damage. How practical this is really depends on your build and your comfort in fighting him and making sure he doesn't have the attack speed modifier affliction, which would kind of suck. So really my advice here is, unless you have a very compelling reason to go and fight him, I would skip the Mausoleum. Okay, we made it. We're talking about Lycia. Lycia is the floor boss for the final floor in the Sanctum. And when you enter her boss room, she'll begin attacking you after her first voice line. Lycia has 3 phases. In the first phase, she entices you to move through the map by moving the safe space of this red smoky fire forward. And before you damage her, Lycia will do this spinning attack, run up to you and do a regular slash, and if you put some distance between the two of you, she might do this dash to close the distance. Now once she gets damaged, she'll add in this delayed slam attack where she covers an area with a big red circular symbol, and once the inner part connects with the outer part, she'll slam down on it. She can also do this attack where she shoots a lightning beam for a while out of her sword, and it'll kind of slowly track you before doing a final hit at the end of it for more damage, all in a straight line, all tracking towards you. And lastly, she can do a charge slash attack that has some range to it. So you have 2 options in phase 1. You can either walk through the whole zone with her, like I did here for the purposes of showing the entire process of trying to evade her instead of kill her, or you can damage her enough that she teleports away. So phase 1 is moving through the maze of red smoke fire, either with her or damaging her enough to send her off, and then finishing the rest of the maze yourself. Phase 2 happens in this smaller arena. She can do all the same attacks as she did in phase 1, except you don't have a ton of room to move around, so it's designed to make you panic a little bit and screw up your positioning. But we're aware of her attacks, so we're not going to screw up our positioning, are we? That's phase 2. Now, if your Sanctum has an average zone level of what I assume is 81 plus, which would be an average of tier 14 and above, Lycia will invite you to phase 3. Now, special note, for everyone that does not know this, you don't have to fight Lycia's true form, which is phase 3. You can instead go down into this reward room and leave her alone. You'll miss out on the uniques that she can drop, an additional chance for her to drop a relic or a sanctified relic, and you'll miss out on being able to complete challenge runs for unique relics like this, but you will be able to get all of the rewards that you said you wanted by the end of the Sanctum. So you'll still go into the reward room, you'll have your reward chest, you'll just miss out on the extra potential drops from fighting her true form. And no, you will not be able to get the challenge items like the original Sin, because see here how it says the Herald of the Scourge drops this? Phase 3 is where you fight Lycia, Herald of the Scourge. Phase 1 and 2 is Lycia, Unholy Heretic. So let's look at phase 3. And this is it, everybody. This is the final fight of the Sanctum. This is the big bad. As soon as you start, she'll summon these stationary spinning double blades. These blades don't hurt you until they do this spin slash, and she can command them to move around the arena in short movement bursts. She can also summon quite a few of them. I've seen upwards of what I think was 8 or 9, so be mindful of that. Her second basic attack is this triple fireball. It shoots out, and then after a moment, because she's wearing a better version of the Nimiz ring she stole from Uber Eater, the projectiles return to her. When she says inevitable, she's doing this red slam attack that she had in phase 1 and 2. Not too hard to avoid, we're familiar with it, we're ready for it. When she says be gone, she raises up a little bit and then slams down on the spot you were when she raised up. So just keep moving, which you should generally be doing anyway, and you'll be fine. Now, the second most important voice line that she has, you will know pain. You've got to be moving or ready to move when she says this. The graphic for the attack doesn't stand out against the gray-blue terrain because it's basically a wind kind of attack. And the longer you sit in this, the more damage it does and the bigger it gets. Look at this. This is what happens when you get hit. I don't know if this is the final form of it. I don't know how heavily it can scale up on itself by doing damage to you, but let's just avoid it. It hits multiple times per second, and I generally like to avoid those kinds of hits. The final voice line you need to be ready for is when she says, I will bathe this world in blood. She flies into the center of the map before she says this, so that's kind of your visual warning that's going to happen. When she does this, you're going to play a movement game with her. She's going to generate rings of red lightning that pulse outwards, and there's going to be holes in each ring that you can get to avoid damage entirely. Now, I highly recommend a movement skill where you can reliably put yourself exactly where your mouse pointer is. This character uses Leap Slam and Frost Blink in conjunction with each other to accomplish this. Lightning Warp, Flame Dash, these work fine. Something like Whirling Blades isn't great because you can't control the exact distance that you travel. And keep this in mind when considering the phase 3 fight. The lightning hits multiple times per wave and deals a significant amount of damage. And keep in mind, this ability is designed to make you nervous. The biggest thing you can do to be successful during this is to take a nice deep breath before going into phase 3 and being ready to point and click on the safe spots that are coming. You may need to travel a little bit to get there for some of them, but the safe spots are going to be there. Look for them and be ready. It also helps to have a skill ready that doesn't make you move, so you can left click on the spot you want to be and then use a skill that stops you in place, like placing a totem or a brand or casting a hex, things like that. Just make sure you have the option selected of always attack without moving on that skill. Okay, with bosses and guards done, let's talk about the different kinds of rooms. First one is find the exit. The rules here are just that you need to find the exit. If you feel comfortable doing it, you could skip by all the guards, all the treasure boxes, and just find the way down and leave. You don't have to kill a thing. The other kind of room is defeat the guards, but it has two variations. The first one is defeat the guards in a maze. This is just a series of rooms with guards in some of them, 1 to 3 of them in a single area at a time. As you get to deeper floors, more often you'll find guards together, most often in pairs. The other one is defeat the guards as well, but it's an arena. This is the room I've received the most questions and complaints about. For floor 1 and 2, it's pretty manageable. For floor 3, a room called Infernal, and floor 4, called Desecrated Crypts, is where people start to struggle. So let's talk about floor 3's version. On floor 3, in the Infernal room, we have a wall separating 2 skull beams mounted. It pays to have instant teleport skills here, and to try to get into a rhythm. That rhythm is going to depend a little bit on your build. Now, I'd like to note here too that guards are susceptible to stun, freeze, chill, other slows. But the underlying key here is that this room tests your knowledge of the guard's abilities while also managing the timing of the dual skull beams. Watch the timing here of the beams as I run clockwise around. It's critical to get a feel for how long these beams last and to offset them against each other so that you have free time without them influencing your movement on one side of the wall at a time. This can be something of a DPS check or a check against your Relic and Sanctum strategy for how you build up inspiration and resolve. The simple truth is that there isn't a trick per se to this room. It's kind of sink or swim time. Now, I recommend being okay with taking a little bit of damage here and being ready to take a little bit of damage. Remember the Undying Archmage and the Blade Dancer? These guys can be particularly hectic here. The Archmage can throw down the Orbs that passively shoot bolts at you, and the Blade Dancer can be difficult to keep track of when there's so much else going on. Floor 4's version is an intensified version of Floor 3. 1 beam, no barrier to use as cover. This isn't intended to be a fair fight and is absolutely a test of either your build's ability to delete targets and or your overall Sanctum strategy with your relics. This room will test your retention of the guard abilities laid out earlier in the video, and will force you to prioritize targets properly. That all said, keep in mind that the monsters in the arena rooms will come in waves, and they won't continuously spawn until you kill each wave. Now there's a few more things that I wanted to add here at the end. Couple extra notes that might be useful. Lycia's true form, by design, does not hit your inspiration or resolve. She goes directly to your actual health bar. All other bosses, including Lycia's Phase 1 and 2 version, should hit your resolve and inspiration as well as your health bar. Regular monsters, guards, and traps should hit only your inspiration and resolve. I've heard some people mention that regular guards sometimes hit them for their actual health pool. If you've seen that, let me know in the comments below. It's worth noting for the find the exit rooms where you have to contend with the molten ball traps that these orbs will explode if you use a totem of any kind, decoy, war chief, protector. Put those in front of where the orb spawns and they will interact and the orb will blow up. And finally, in this find the exit room, where you take this side route here, when you land on this block, go to the very edge and then jump away back to the previous one. Do this because the guard who's up ahead could be the deadly blade dancer, and he does have the ability to blink strike to you. If you go to the edge and then jump away and there's no blink strike, most likely he's not there. Alright guys, that's it. I don't love it when I make videos that surpass 30 minutes, and although there's more to talk about within the Sanctum, which I'll get into in other videos and shorts, that should give you a bit of a leg up on dealing with most of the monsters, bosses, and mechanics that might trip you up in the Sanctum. If you have any questions, you have any things you want to mention that you think I missed, leave it in the comments below. And if you haven't subbed, just know that your view is also important to me, so thank you for that. And until next time, this is Eli, signing off.